The transport ship's engines hummed quietly as it approached Kepler Station. Through the small window, Lee Hanna watched the massive academy grow larger. The Galactic Naval Academy was built into an asteroid, its metal walls gleaming under the light of 3 distant suns. Ships moved in and out like busy insects around a hive. Hanna pressed her face closer to the glass. This would be her home for the next 2 years. She had worked hard to get here. Every human colony wanted their best students to attend the academy. Earth had chosen her. The other passengers on the transport ship gave her strange looks. A blue-skinned Altarian woman whispered something to her friend. 2 tall, thin beings from Centauri Prime pointed at Hanna and shook their heads. She heard the word Deathworlder more than once. Hanna was used to this. Earth was known throughout the galaxy as one of the most dangerous planets that had ever produced intelligent life. Most aliens thought humans were either crazy or impossibly tough just for living there. The truth was simpler. Humans just didn't know any better. The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Hanna gathered her single bag and followed the other passengers through the airlock. The Academy's corridors were wide and clean. Everything was white and silver. Pictures of famous graduates lined the walls. Hanna recognized some faces from her history books. These beings had won great battles and explored new worlds. A mechanical voice announced arrivals over hidden speakers. Transport 77 Alpha has docked. New cadets report to Processing Bay 4. Hanna followed the signs through the corridors. Other new students walked the same path. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some had fur, others had scales. A few floated in small water tanks on wheels. The galaxy was full of different kinds of life. Processing Bay 4 was a large room filled with desks and computers. Hanna got in line behind a creature that looked like a walking tree. When her turn came, she stepped up to the desk. The clerk was a Velcoran, with gray skin and 4 arms. His nameplate read, Administrative Specialist Tikvar. He looked at his screen and frowned. Lee Hanna from Earth? He asked. Yes, sir. He typed something. This is unusual. We don't normally accept students from Class 12 Deathworlds. I scored in the top 1% on all my tests, Hanna said. Yes, I can see that. Tikvar's frown deepened. Very unusual indeed. He handed her a data pad. Your room assignment is here. Classes start tomorrow. Don't cause any trouble. Hanna took the pad and walked away. She heard Tikvar talking to his supervisor in rapid clicks and whistles. Her room was on level 7, section C. The corridors here were narrower than the main areas. Other cadets passed her in small groups, talking and laughing. When they saw her, they went quiet. Room C471 was small but clean. 2 beds, 2 desks, 1 window looking out at space. Her roommate was already there, unpacking clothes from a large trunk. You must be Hanna, the roommate said. She was human too, but taller and thinner than Hanna. Her skin was pale, almost white. I'm Kim Sora. I'm from New Sol Colony. Nice to meet you, Hanna said. She put her bag on the empty bed. So you're from Earth? Sora asked. The actual Earth? Born and raised in Sol. Well, what's left of it? Sora stared at her. I've never met anyone from the homeworld before. Is it really as dangerous as they say? Hanna thought about her childhood, playing in the ruins of old buildings, learning to avoid the acid rain, watching her parents hunt wild animals for food. It seemed normal to her. It's just home, she said. That evening, Hanna went to the cadet dining hall. The room was huge with tables that could seat thousands. She got her food from the machines and looked for a place to sit. Most tables were full of cadets from the same species. The Altarians sat together in one corner. The Centaurians had claimed several tables near the windows. The insect-like Mantians clicked and chittered at each other while they ate. Hana found an empty table near the back. She had just started eating when two male cadets approached her. They looked human, but their skin was blue-gray, and they were much taller than normal humans. "You're the Deathworlder," one of them said. His nameplate read, "Nam Jihoon." "I'm Hana." "I'm Jihoon. This is my brother Minho." The second cadet nodded. "We're from Altair 7. "Nice planet," Hana said. She had studied the colony worlds in school. "Much nicer than Earth, I'm sure," Minho said. "How did you even survive long enough to get here?" "Same way everyone else does, I guess." The brothers looked at each other. "We heard that Earth has poisonous air," Jihoon said. "Only in some places," Hana said, "and only after the big storms. And the gravity is so strong it can crush bones," Minho added. "You get used to it. And the animals try to eat people." "Well, yes, but people are pretty good at fighting back." The brothers stared at her. Then they laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. "This should be interesting," Jihoon said. "I wonder how long you'll last." They walked away, still laughing. Hana finished her meal alone. Later, back in her room, Sora was reading on her data pad. "How did it go?" she asked. "Fine," Hana said. "Met some Altarians." "The Nam brothers? They're trouble. Their father is some kind of important general. They think they're better than everyone else." "Are they?" "Better. Maybe. Their planet has been at peace for 300 years. They've had time to perfect their military training. Most of their people are born soldiers." Hana lay down on her bed and looked out the window. Stars filled the black space beyond the station. Each one probably had planets around it. Some of those planets had life, some had intelligence, and all of them thought Earth was a nightmare world. "Sora?" she said. "Yeah? What do you know about the Academy's tests?" "The usual stuff. Combat training, strategy, engineering, diplomacy." "Why?" "Just wondering." But Hana was thinking about something else. During processing, she had overheard two instructors talking in the hallway. They mentioned something called the Crucible examination. One of them said it was the Academy's most dangerous test. The other one laughed and said that this year's test would be especially interesting. They had been looking right at her when they said it. Sora turned off her light. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." Hana stared at the ceiling for a long time before sleep came. Outside the window, the stars burned cold and distant. She thought about home, about the warm yellow sun and the blue-green world where humans had learned to survive against impossible odds. She didn't know it yet, but tomorrow would begin a chain of events that would change how the entire galaxy thought about her species. The instructors had plans for the girl from the Death World. They wanted to see what she was really made of. They were about to find out. The alarm woke Hana at 5 in the morning. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside her room. She could hear cadets shouting and running. "What's happening?" Sora asked, sitting up in bed. "Emergency drill, maybe?" Hana was already getting dressed. The corridor was full of confused cadets. Everyone was talking at once in different languages. A mechanical voice spoke over the noise. "Attention all second-year cadets. Report to Assembly Hall 1 immediately. This is not a drill." Hana and Sora joined the crowd moving toward the assembly hall. Around them, cadets whispered and worried. Emergency assemblies usually meant bad news. Assembly Hall 1 could hold 5,000 beings. This morning, only about 300 cadets filled the front rows. These were the second-year students, the ones who had survived their first year. At the academy, the lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the stage. Captain Thessara walked out from behind the curtain. She was a reptilian from the desert world Aridus. Her scales were dark green and her eyes were bright yellow. She was known throughout the academy as the toughest. Instructor. "Cadets," she said. Her voice carried clearly through the hall. "Today we announce the participants for this year's Crucible examination." The hall went completely silent. Even the air recycling system seemed quieter. Hana had heard whispers about the Crucible. It was the Academy's final test for advanced students. Only the best cadets were chosen. Many who took it never came back. "The Crucible is not just a test," Captain Thessara continued. "It is a trial by fire. It separates true warriors from those who merely dream of glory." A holographic display appeared above the stage. It showed a dark planet covered in swirling clouds. Lightning flashed in the atmosphere. The surface looked like a nightmare of jagged rocks and strange colors. "This is Mortis Prime," the captain said. "It is located in the Thanatos sector, in a region of space we call the Dead Zone. No intelligent species has ever successfully colonized this world." The display zoomed in. Hana could see twisted forests of crystal and metal, rivers that glowed with unnatural light, mountains that seemed to move by themselves. Mortis Prime is home to some of the most dangerous life forms in the known galaxy, the captain explained. "The atmosphere is toxic to most species. The gravity is twice what most of you are used to. The weather can change from freezing cold to boiling heat in minutes." The display showed creatures that looked like living nightmares. Things with too many teeth and claws that could cut through metal. Hana found herself leaning forward, studying each image carefully. 12 cadets will be selected for this examination," Captain Thessara said. "You will be dropped onto Mortis Prime with basic survival gear. Your mission is simple. Survive for 72 hours and reach the extraction point 200 kilometers from your landing zone." Murmurs spread through the audience. 200 kilometers was a long way on a normal world. On a death world like Mortis Prime, it might as well be on the other side of the galaxy. The Crucible examination has been conducted for over 200 years, the captain continued. In that time, 647 cadets have attempted it. 497 have survived. Someone gasped. Others did quick math in their heads. That was only about 77% survival rate. For the Academy's best students, the names of this year's participants will now be announced, Captain Thessara said. A list appeared on the holographic display. Hana read the names as they scrolled past. Most were from the warrior species, Velkorans, Mantians, reptilians, like the captain. These were beings whose entire cultures were built around fighting and survival. Then she saw her own name. Cadet Lee Hana, from Earth. The hall erupted in surprised voices. Hana heard someone behind her say, "The Deathworlder? But she's only been here 3 days!" Captain Thessara raised her hand for silence. "The selection process for the Crucible is random," she said, but her yellow eyes found Hana in the crowd, and there was something in that look that suggested it wasn't random at all. After the assembly, the selected cadets were taken to a briefing room. Hana found herself sitting between a massive Velkoran prince named Rixthul and an insect-like Mantian warrior called Kliktar. Both of them kept staring at her. "I don't understand," Rixthul said to Kliktar. Why would they send a Deathworlder on the Crucible? It's not a test of pure survival. Maybe they want to see how quickly she dies, Clicktar replied. His voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. Hana ignored them. She was studying the briefing materials on her datapad. Maps of Mortis Prime, information about the local wildlife, weather patterns, geological surveys. She read everything twice, memorizing details that might be important. An instructor came in with equipment. Each cadet received the same basic gear: a survival pack with emergency food, a plasma cutting tool, basic medical supplies, and a locator beacon. The beacon will track your location, the instructor explained. It also contains an emergency transmitter. Use it only if you are about to die. Rescue teams will attempt to extract you, but on Mortis Prime, there are no guarantees. Hana picked up her plasma cutter. It was a standard tool, designed for cutting through metal and rock. She had used similar devices on Earth to hunt the armored creatures that lived in the ruins of old cities. The Mantian cadet, Clicktar, was examining his own equipment with obvious displeasure. This gear is insufficient, he clicked. My people would bring honor blades and acid spit glands for such a hunt. The test is about adapting to limited resources, the instructor said. You get what you get. Rixthul hefted his plasma cutter like a sword. On my world, we train from birth for trials like this. My family has ruled the warrior clans for 1,000 years. Hana said nothing. She was thinking about the images of Mortis Prime's creatures. Most of them were ambush predators designed to hide and strike quickly, but they had patterns. Everything had patterns if you knew how to look. The briefing lasted 3 hours. They learned about Mortis Prime's day-night cycle, which lasted 36 standard hours. They studied maps of the terrain between the landing zones and the extraction point. They reviewed emergency procedures and communication protocols. As they prepared to leave, Captain Thisara pulled Hana aside. "Cadet Lee," she said quietly, "I'm curious to see how you perform on this examination." "I'll do my best, Captain. I'm sure you will." The captain's yellow eyes seemed to glow. "Your species has a reputation for being resourceful." "We do. What we have to do." "Yes," Captain Thisara said. "I believe you do." That evening, Hana sat in her room, reviewing the briefing materials one more time. Sora watched her with worried eyes. "You don't have to do this," Sora said. "You could claim medical exemption. Say you're not adapted for the atmospheric conditions." "I'm fine." "Hana, this isn't like Earth. This is a world that was specifically classified as uninhabitable. Even the Velkarons won't try to colonize it." Hana looked up from her data pad. "Do you know what the most dangerous predator on Earth is? Those acid-spitting lizards?" "Humans," Hana said. "We're the reason everything else on Earth is so dangerous. They had to evolve just to survive us." Sora stared at her. "That's terrifying." "No," Hana said, turning back to her studies. "That's just Tuesday." Outside their window, the transport ships were preparing for departure. Tomorrow, they would carry 12 cadets to a world where nightmares lived and breathed. Most of the cadets would spend tonight praying to their gods or writing letters to their families. Hana spent it memorizing the hunting patterns of creatures that had never seen a human before. They had no idea what was coming. The drop pod shook violently as it entered Mortis Prime's atmosphere. Through the small window, Hana watched the planet's surface rush up to meet her. The landscape below looked like a painting made of nightmares. Red lightning split the purple sky. The ground was covered in what looked like crystal trees that moved in the wind, creating a sound like breaking glass. In the distance, Mountains glowed with their own inner light. 30 seconds to impact, the pod's computer announced in a calm voice that didn't match the situation. Hana checked her harness one more time. Her equipment pack was secured to her chest. The plasma cutter hung at her side. She had memorized every piece of gear and its location. The pod hit the ground hard enough to rattle her teeth. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the hiss of cooling metal. Then the computer spoke again. Landing successful. External atmosphere confirmed toxic to human life. Recommend immediate shelter construction. Hana ignored the recommendation. She had been breathing toxic air since childhood. Earth's atmosphere wasn't exactly friendly either, especially after the acid storms. The pod door opened with a soft pop. The air that rushed in smelled like metal and electricity. It burned her throat slightly, but not worse than a bad day in Seoul's industrial district. She stepped out onto Mortis Prime's surface. The first thing she noticed was the gravity. It was heavy, maybe twice what she was used to. But Earth's gravity was already stronger than most inhabited worlds. This felt like wearing a heavy backpack. The second thing she noticed was the sound. The crystal trees made a constant ringing noise as they swayed. Underneath that, she could hear other sounds. Clicking, scraping, the distant roar of something large. The third thing she noticed was the smell of predators. Hana had grown up hunting in Earth's ruins. She knew the smell of creatures that killed for food. It was different from plant eaters or scavengers. Predators smelled like blood and patience. Something was watching her. She moved away from the drop pod quickly. The bright metal would attract attention. Better to find cover and assess the situation. The briefing materials had mentioned the local wildlife, but seeing them in person was different. A pack of creatures moved through the crystal forest about 50 meters away. They looked like wolves made of living glass, with razor-sharp edges instead of fur. The briefing had called them razor wings. Hana counted 6 of them. They moved in a hunting formation, just like the pack animals on Earth. But these creatures could fly as well as run. Their crystalline wings caught the strange light and threw rainbow patterns across the ground. She watched them for 10 minutes, learning their behavior. They communicated with high-pitched sounds that made the crystal trees vibrate. They marked territory by scratching symbols into the metallic rocks, and they were getting closer to her hiding spot. The academy instructors probably expected her to hide until the pack moved on, or to try to scare them away with the plasma cutter. Those were standard survival tactics. Hana had a better idea. She studied the terrain around her. The crystal trees grew in neat rows like someone had planted them. Between the rows were paths of smooth stone. The razor wings were following one of these paths toward her position. Hana pulled out her emergency flares. The briefing said they were for signaling rescue teams, but they could also be used to create light and heat. And on a world where most creatures had evolved in strange atmospheric conditions, sudden bright light might be very confusing. She set up her trap quickly. 3 flares arranged in a triangle, with delayed activation timers. She placed them along the path the razor wings were following. Then she climbed into the crystal trees above the trap. The creatures arrived 5 minutes later. They moved cautiously, sensing something wrong. Their pack leader, a large female with scars across her crystalline hide, sniffed the air suspiciously. Hana triggered the first flare. Brilliant white light erupted from the small device. The razor wings shrieked and scattered, their formation breaking apart, but they were pack hunters. They regrouped quickly and began searching for the source of the light. That's when Hana triggered the second flare. This one was behind them, cutting off their retreat route. The pack found themselves caught between two sources of blinding light. They were confused now, calling to each other in panicked voices. The third flare activated automatically, right in the middle of the pack. What happened next was exactly what Hana had hoped for. The Razorwings, blinded and frightened, began attacking anything that moved. In their panic, they couldn't tell the difference between threats and packmates. Within seconds, they were fighting each other with the same vicious intensity they would use on prey. Hana watched from above as the pack tore itself apart. When the lights finally died, only 2 Razorwings were still alive, and both were badly wounded. They limped away into the crystal forest, no longer a threat to anyone. She climbed down and examined the bodies. The Razorwings were made of a substance that was part organic, part crystalline. Their claws were incredibly sharp, sharper than any metal she had seen. Their wings could be used as cutting tools or even weapons. Working quickly, she harvested what she needed: claws for knives, wing membranes for cutting edges. Even some of the larger bones could be useful as tool handles. High above Mortis Prime, the Academy monitoring station tracked her progress. Professor Yilandra stared at her screens in confusion. "How is this possible?" she asked her assistant. "The human cadet's stress levels are actually decreasing." On another screen, Cadet Rix Thul was struggling to build a shelter from loose rocks. His vital signs showed extreme stress and fatigue. Cadet Clicktar had found a cave, but he was trapped inside by a pack of creatures called Screaming Shadows. "Maybe the sensors are malfunctioning," the assistant suggested. Professor Yilandra switched to the visual feed from Hana's location. The camera showed the human calmly skinning a Razorwing corpse, using tools she had made from the creature's own body parts. "No," the professor said quietly. "The sensors are working fine." Back on the planet's surface, Hana finished her work and began moving toward the extraction point. She had studied the maps carefully during the briefing. The most direct route would take her through 3 different ecological zones: the crystal forest, the metal swamps, and the volcanic plains. Each zone had its own predators and dangers. Most cadets would try to avoid the worst areas, taking longer but safer routes. Hana planned to go straight through the middle of everything. As she walked, she tested her new weapons. The Razorwing claws made excellent knives. The wing membranes could slice through the crystal trees like they were made of paper. She was already better armed than when she had started. Something howled in the distance. It was a sound full of hunger and intelligence. Whatever made that noise was much larger than the Razorwings, and it was hunting. Hana smiled and kept walking. On Earth, she had been prey trying to become a predator. Here on Mortis Prime, she was already at the top of the food chain. She just had to prove it to the local wildlife. Behind her, the wreckage of the Razorwing pack told a story that would confuse xenobiologists for years. It looked like the creatures had spontaneously turned on each other for no reason. But there was a reason. The reason was walking away through the crystal forest, humming an old earth song and carrying weapons made from her enemies' bones. The real hunt was just beginning. 12 hours into the examination, Hana had covered 60 kilometers. She was moving 3 times faster than the Academy's projected pace. The crystal forest had given way to the metal swamps, where silver trees grew out of pools of liquid mercury. She paused at the edge of a clearing to study the tracks in the metallic mud. Something large had passed this way recently. The prints were deep and wide, with claw marks that scored the ground like knife cuts. Hana knelt and touched one of the tracks. Still warm. Whatever made these prints was close. A scream echoed through. the swamp. It was high-pitched and full of terror, definitely not from one of the local creatures. That was the sound of an intelligent being in mortal danger. Hana moved toward the sound, staying low and quiet. She had learned to move silently in Earth's ruined cities, where making noise could attract things much worse than razor wings. Through the silver trees, she could see what was happening. Cadet Rixthul, the Velkoran prince, was backed against a massive metal tree trunk. Circling him was a creature that hadn't been in any of the briefing materials. The thing was twice as tall as Hana and covered in black fur that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes glowed red in the strange twilight of the swamp. When it moved, Hana could see that its muscles were like bundles of steel cable under the dark fur. The briefing materials had mentioned shadow maws, but the descriptions hadn't done them justice. This creature was built for killing in the most efficient way possible. Its claws were longer than Hana's forearm. Its teeth were designed to crush bones and tear through armor. Rixthul had his plasma cutter out, but his hands were shaking too badly to aim properly. The Shadow Maw was playing with him, moving closer and then backing away, enjoying his fear. Most cadets would call for help or try to circle around and avoid the situation. Getting involved would only put them in danger, too. The examination was about individual survival, not rescue missions. Hana climbed into the metal trees above the Shadow Maw. She had learned something important from the Razorwing encounter. The creatures on Mortis Prime were dangerous, but they weren't smart. They relied on instinct and brute force. Humans had something better, the ability to think several steps ahead. The Shadow Maw was focused entirely on Rixthul. It didn't know there was a second threat above its head. Hana studied the creature's anatomy, looking for weak points. The neck was too heavily muscled. The back was protected by thick fur and what looked like natural armor plates. But there was a spot just behind the front leg where the armor didn't quite meet. If she could get a blade between those plates. Hana pulled out her best razorwing claw. She had shaped it into a spear point and attached it to a shaft made from crystal tree branches. It wasn't much compared to the creature's natural weapons, but it would have to do. She waited for the right moment. The Shadow Maw reared up on its hind legs, preparing to crush Rixthul with its massive claws. At that moment, its weak spot was fully exposed. Hana dropped from the tree like a stone. The improvised spear punched through the Shadow Maw's hide with surgical precision. The creature roared in surprise and pain, spinning around to face this new threat. But Hana was already moving, rolling away from its claws and coming up with her plasma cutter ready. The Shadow Maw was fast, but it was also confused. It had been focused on one target, and now there were two. For just a moment, it hesitated. That moment was all Hana needed. She fired the plasma cutter at point-blank range, cutting a deep line across the creature's throat. Superheated gas burned through fur and flesh like it was paper. The Shadow Maw collapsed, its dark blood mixing with the mercury pools. Rixthul stared at her with wide eyes. You saved my life." "You're welcome." Hana was already examining the Shadow Maw's body, looking for useful materials. "I don't understand," Rixthul said. "Why did you help me? This is a competition." "Is it?" Hana pulled one of the creature's claws free. It was as long as her arm and sharper than her best knife. "I thought it was a survival test. But we're supposed to be competing against each other." Hana looked at him with genuine confusion. "Why would we compete against each other when this whole planet is trying to kill us?" Rixthul helped her harvest materials from the Shadow Maw. He moved carefully, favoring his left arm where the creature's claws had scratched him. The wounds weren't deep, but they were bleeding. "Here," Hana said. She pulled medical supplies from her pack and began cleaning his injuries. "These look like they might get infected." As she worked, Rixthul watched her face. "You're not what I expected," he said. "What did you expect? A savage. A barbarian. That's what everyone says about deathworlders." Hana finished bandaging his arm. "Maybe we are savages. But savages know how to survive." They traveled together for the next 4 hours. Rixthul was impressed by how easily Hana moved through the dangerous terrain. She seemed to know instinctively which paths were safe and which ones hid predators. When they stopped to rest, she shared some of the food she had gathered from the crystal forest. It was fruit from the trees, but she had tested it carefully first to make sure it wasn't poisonous. "How did you know this was safe to eat?" Rixthul asked. "I watched what the local animals were eating," Hana explained. "If it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough for us. But the briefing said all the plant life on Mortis Prime was toxic. The briefing was written by people who never came here." Hana bit into a piece of the crystal fruit. It tasted like metal and electricity, but it was full of nutrients. Sometimes you have to trust your own judgment. As they prepared to part ways, Rixthul grabbed her arm. "Hana," he said, "what you did back there, that creature had killed 17 cadets in previous examinations. 17! And you took it down like it was nothing." "It wasn't nothing. It was dangerous. But you made it look easy." Hana thought about that as she walked away from Rixthul. Easy wasn't the right word, but it had been familiar. The Shadow Maw was just another predator, like the ones she had fought on Earth. It was bigger and stranger, but the principles were the same. Find the weak spot. Use the environment. Think faster than your enemy. High above, the monitoring station was in chaos. Professor Yelandra had called in her supervisors to watch the feeds from Hana's location. "This is unprecedented," Commandant Veltar said. He was a tall, gray-skinned Altarian with 4 arms and cold blue eyes. "The human has eliminated 2 separate apex predators in less than 12 hours. Look at her vital signs." Professor Yelandra pointed to her screens. "Heart rate, stress hormones, brain activity. She's not just surviving this examination, she's enjoying it." On the screen, they could see Hana walking through the metal swamp with confident strides. She carried weapons made from her defeated enemies. Her clothes were stained with alien blood, but she moved like someone taking a pleasant walk through a park. "What kind of world produces beings like this?" Veltar asked quietly. Professor Yelandra pulled up Earth's classification file. "A Class 12 death world. Gravity 1.3 times standard. Toxic atmosphere. Predatory megafauna. Frequent extinction events." "And humans evolved there naturally?" "Not just evolved. Thrived. They became the dominant species by hunting. Everything else to near extinction." Veltar watched Hana disappear into the volcanic plains that marked the final stage of the examination route. "Perhaps we need to revise our understanding of what Deathworld means," he said. On Mortis Prime, Hana felt the ground getting warmer under her feet. The metal swamps were giving way to the volcanic region. According to her maps, this was the most dangerous part of the journey. She was looking forward to it. The air began to smell wrong 6 hours before the storm hit. Hana noticed it first as a sharp, metallic taste that made her throat burn. The sky, already strange with its purple clouds and red lightning, started to turn a sickly green color. She had been walking through the volcanic plains for 3 hours. The ground here was black glass, formed when lava had cooled quickly. Steam rose from cracks in the earth, carrying the smell of sulfur and other chemicals she couldn't identify. But this new smell was different. It was the smell of acid. Hana checked her maps and weather data. According to the briefing materials, Mortis Prime had seasonal acid storms. They happened when the volcanic activity combined with certain atmospheric conditions. The storms could last for days and were deadly to most forms of life. The next scheduled storm wasn't supposed to happen for another month. The briefing materials were wrong again. Hana looked around for shelter. The volcanic plains were mostly flat, with very few places to hide. In the distance, she could see a range of hills made from cooled lava. There might be caves there. She started running. Behind her, the sky continued to darken. The green color spread like a disease across the purple clouds. Lightning began to flash more frequently, and each flash was followed by a sound like metal tearing. 20 minutes later, the first drops of rain began to fall. Where the drops hit the ground, the black glass started to bubble and smoke. Hana pulled up her jacket's hood, but she knew it wouldn't be enough protection. The acid rain on Earth was bad, but this was something else entirely. She reached the hills just as the real storm arrived. The rain came down in sheets of liquid fire. Everything it touched began to dissolve. The volcanic glass melted into steaming pools. The few plants that grew in this region withered and died within seconds. Hana found a cave entrance and dove inside just as the storm reached full intensity. The cave was deeper than she had expected. It stretched back into the hillside for at least 50 meters. The walls were smooth stone, worn by countless years of acid storms. Near the back, she found a chamber with a small pool of clean water. This would do. Hana set up her shelter carefully. She used her plasma cutter to create ventilation holes near the ceiling, angling them so the acid rain couldn't get in. She built a small fire using debris from outside the cave, testing the airflow to make sure the smoke would escape properly. Then she settled down to wait out the storm. Outside, the acid rain continued to fall. Through the cave entrance, she could see lightning that was no longer red but brilliant white. The sound was incredible, like the planet itself was screaming. Hana pulled out her emergency rations and ate dinner while she listened to the storm. The sound reminded her of home, of the acid storms that would sweep across Earth's ruined cities. She had spent many nights in similar caves, waiting for the weather to clear, but this storm was giving her an opportunity. According to her maps, there was a creature that lived in these volcanic hills. The briefing materials called it a void stalker. It was supposedly one of the deadliest predators on Mortis Prime. The briefing said it was nearly invincible. It could change color to match its surroundings. Its claws could cut through any known armor. It was fast, smart, and completely ruthless. Most importantly, it never came out during acid storms, which meant this was the perfect time to hunt it. Hana had noticed tracks outside the cave entrance. They were strange tracks, like someone had pressed claws into the stone and then twisted them. The marks were fresh, probably made just before the storm started. She began to prepare for the hunt. The Void Stalker's hide would be perfect for protection against acid rain. Its claws would make excellent weapons. And according to the briefing materials, creatures that survived on Mortis Prime had incredibly nutritious meat. Hana had been living on emergency rations for 18 hours. She was ready for a proper meal. She checked her equipment. The Shadow Maw claws made good knives. The razor-wing wing membranes could be used as shields or cutting tools. Her plasma cutter was still at full charge. More importantly, she had learned something about Mortis Prime's ecosystem. The creatures here were adapted to specific environmental conditions. They were incredibly dangerous in their element, but they had weaknesses that could be exploited. The Void Stalker's weakness was that it had never encountered a human before. Hana moved deeper into the cave system. The tunnels branched and twisted, carved by millions of years of acid storms. She followed the strange claw marks, tracking her prey through the darkness. She found the Void Stalker in a large chamber about 100 meters from the entrance. The creature was huge, nearly 3 meters tall and covered in what looked like living shadow. Its eyes glowed with a pale blue light. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The creature hadn't noticed her yet. It was grooming itself, using its claws to clean some kind of acidic residue from its hide. Hana watched it carefully, learning its behavior patterns. The Void Stalker moved like liquid mercury, flowing from one position to another without seeming to touch the ground in between. Its camouflage was perfect. If she hadn't been tracking its scent, she never would have found it. But Hana had something the creature didn't expect: patience. She waited for 2 hours, hidden in the shadows at the chamber entrance. She watched the Void Stalker eat, sleep, and wake up again. She learned how it moved, how it hunted, how it thought. Most importantly, she learned that it was an ambush predator. It was designed to hide and strike suddenly. It wasn't built for a long, drawn-out fight. When Hana finally moved, she did it slowly and deliberately. She didn't try to sneak up on the creature. Instead, she walked directly into the chamber, making enough noise to get its attention. The Void Stalker's head snapped up, its blue eyes fixed on her. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the creature attacked. It was faster than anything Hana had ever seen. 1 second it was across the chamber, the next it was right in front of her, claws reaching for her throat. But Hana had been expecting this. She rolled to the side, using one of the razor-wing membranes as a shield. The Void Stalker's claws cut through the membrane like paper, but it bought her enough time to get her plasma cutter ready. The creature spun around for another attack. This time, Hana was ready. She fired the plasma cutter not at the creature, but at the ceiling above it. The superheated beam cut through the stone like butter. A shower of rocks crashed down, forcing the Void Stalker to dodge backward. Hana pressed her attack. She had learned from watching the creature that it relied on its speed and camouflage. Take those away, and it was just another predator. She herded the Void Stalker toward a narrow section of the chamber, where its size and speed would work against it. Then she used her Shadow Maw claw knives to force it into close combat. The fight lasted exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds. When it was over, Hana stood over the body of one of Mortis Prime's apex predators. She was breathing hard, and she had several cuts on her arms, but she was alive. The Void Stalker was not. High above the planet, the monitoring station was in complete chaos. The acid storm had knocked out most of their surveillance equipment. They had lost contact with 11 of the 12 cadets. The only signal still coming through was from Hana's locator beacon. "How is this possible?" Professor Yelandra asked. "The storm should have dissolved her equipment hours ago." Commandant Veltar studied the readings. "Her beacon is transmitting from inside the volcanic hills. She must have found shelter. But the vital signs..." Professor Yelandra pointed at her screen. "Look at this. Her heart rate spiked about 20 minutes ago, then returned to normal, and her body temperature increased. increased? In the middle of an acid storm? It's like she was exercising. They stared at the screen in silence. Outside the monitoring station, other instructors were preparing emergency rescue teams. The acid storm had turned the crucible examination into a potential disaster. But somewhere in the volcanic hills of Mortis Prime, one cadet was having the time of her life. Hana finished skinning the Void Stalker and took stock of her new resources. The creature's hide was incredibly tough and naturally resistant to acid. Its claws were sharper than her best knives, and its meat, when properly cooked, was surprisingly tasty. She had entered the storm as a student with basic survival gear. She was leaving it as an apex predator with custom equipment made from her defeated enemies. The storm was beginning to clear. Soon she would be able to continue her journey to the extraction point. Hana looked forward to meeting whatever else Mortis Prime had to offer. Professor Yilandra had not slept in 36 hours. She sat in the monitoring station, staring at screens that showed data she couldn't quite believe. Empty coffee cups covered her desk. Her usually neat appearance was disheveled. "This can't be right," she muttered, checking the readings for the 100th time. Commandant Veltar entered the monitoring station, followed by 3 other senior instructors. They all looked as tired and confused as the professor. "Report," Veltar said. Professor Yilandra gestured to her screens. Cadet Hana has not only reached the halfway point to extraction, she's actually gained mass since planetfall. Gained mass? That's impossible. I thought so, too. But look at these readings. She pulled up a chart showing weight measurements from Hana's equipment. When she landed, total body weight was 62 kilograms. Current reading is 67 kilograms. Instructor Captain Thaisara leaned over the professor's shoulder to study the data. Equipment malfunction? I thought that might be it. But look at this. Professor Yilandra switched to a different screen. Nutritional analysis from her waste processing. She's not just surviving on emergency rations. She's eating local fauna. The instructors stared at the data in silence. Mortis Prime's wildlife was not considered edible by any known species. The briefing materials specifically warned against consuming local organisms. What about the other cadets? Veltar asked. Professor Yilandra switched to an overview screen showing all 12 locator beacons. 5 of them were red, indicating emergency status. 4 were yellow, showing severe stress. 2 were offline completely. Only 1 beacon showed green status. Cadet Rixthol is injured but stable, she reported. Cadet Clicktar managed to find shelter during the acid storm. Cadet Blue Wave is suffering from atmospheric poisoning but should survive until extraction. And the human? Professor Yilandra highlighted Hana's beacon. According to these readings, she's in perfect health. Better than perfect, actually. Her physical condition has improved since the examination started. Captain Thaisara hissed softly, a sound her species made when confused. Show me the behavioral analysis. The screen changed to show a psychological profile based on biometric data, heart rate, brain activity, stress hormones, sleep patterns. For most cadets, the readings would show extreme stress, fear, and exhaustion. Hana's profile looked like someone taking a relaxing vacation. I've been monitoring crucible examinations for 20 years, Professor Yilandra said quietly. I've never seen anything like this. Veltar studied the data carefully. What's her current location? 70 kilometers from the extraction point. She's moving through the bleeding gorge. Everyone in the room went quiet. The Bleeding Gorge was the most dangerous part of the examination route. It was a narrow canyon filled with predators that had learned to work together. Most cadets tried to go around it, adding days to their journey. She's going straight through, Professor Yelandra continued. And according to these readings, she's not alone. What do you mean? 2 other life signs are moving with her, Cadet Kim Sora and Cadet Choi Daiho. They joined up with her about 6 hours ago. Captain Thisara pulled up the records for those cadets. Kim Sora is from New Sol Colony, standard human physiology. Choi Daiho is also colonial human, but with genetic modifications for low-gravity environments. Both were showing severe stress indicators before they met up with the Earth human, Professor Yelandra added. Now their readings have stabilized. Veltar turned to look out the monitoring station's main window. In the distance, Mortis Prime hung in space like a dark jewel. Lightning still flashed in its atmosphere, and the volcanic activity made parts of it glow red. How is she doing it? He asked. I don't know, Professor Yelandra admitted. But I have a theory. She pulled up Earth's classification files on her screen. Images of Earth's landscape filled the display. Ruined cities, toxic storms, predatory animals the size of buildings. Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world, she said. That's the highest classification we have. But maybe we need to create a new category. What do you mean? Look at these images. This is where humans evolved. Not just survived, but thrived. They became the dominant species by hunting everything else on the planet. Captain Thisara studied the images with growing amazement. These creatures, they're larger than anything on Mortis Prime, and humans hunted them to extinction, using tools made from stone and metal, no advanced technology, no genetic modifications, just intelligence and persistence. Veltar was beginning to understand. You're saying that compared to Earth, Mortis Prime is actually easy, Professor Yelandra finished. For her, this isn't a survival test. It's a hunting expedition. On the planet's surface, Hana was teaching Kim Sora how to read the tracks left by local predators. They had found each other near the entrance to the Bleeding Gorge, where Sora had been hiding in a small cave. Sora was injured, with acid burns on her arms from the recent storm. Choi Daiho had found them an hour later, exhausted and nearly out of supplies. Now all 3 of them were moving through the gorge together. See these marks? Hana pointed to scratches in the stone wall. The claws that made them are about 15 centimeters long. That means we're dealing with pack hunters, probably 6 to 8 individuals. Sora looked nervously at the narrow canyon, walls rising on either side of them. Should we go around? No need, Hana said. They're ambush predators. They hide in the caves up there and drop down on their prey, but they won't attack a group our size unless they're desperate. How do you know all this? Choi Daiho asked. Same way you know things, Hana replied. I learned. As they walked, Hana shared food she had prepared from her hunting. The meat was from the Void Stalker, cooked over a fire made from its bones. It tasted strange but was incredibly nutritious. This is amazing, Sora said, eating hungrily. I've been living on emergency rations for 2 days. The rations are fine for short-term survival, Hana explained. But if you're going to be active, you need proper nutrition. The local wildlife is actually very healthy once you know how to prepare it safely. Choi Daiho stared at her. You've been eating the local animals? Why wouldn't I? They're just animals. But the briefing said they were poisonous. The briefing was written by people who never tried eating them, Hana said patiently. I tested small amounts first, watched for reactions, built up tolerance gradually, basic survival technique. They climbed over a fallen boulder that blocked the path. On the other side, the gorge opened into a wider area with pools of clear water. We can rest here, Hana said. It's defensible, good sight lines, fresh water. As they set up a temporary camp, Sora watched Hana work. The Earth-born human moved with easy confidence, checking the area for threats, setting up early warning systems, preparing food. She made everything look simple. Hana, Sora said quietly, on my world we heard stories about Earth, about how dangerous it was. But I always thought they were exaggerated. Probably not, Hana replied, building a small fire. Earth is pretty dangerous. How did you survive growing up there? Hana thought about the question for a moment. I guess we just didn't know any better. When you're born somewhere, it's just home. You learn to deal with whatever's there. But this place... Choi Daeho gestured at the alien landscape around them. This is supposed to be one of the most hostile environments in the galaxy. It's not that bad, Hana said. The gravity's a little heavy, the air burns your throat, and everything wants to eat you. But that's just Tuesday on Earth. High above them, the monitoring station continued to track their progress. Professor Yilandra had called in xenobiologists and military strategists to analyze what they were seeing. The implications are staggering, one of the experts said. If humans can adapt to environments like this so easily, they could colonize worlds we thought were uninhabitable, another added. Commandant Veltar listened to the discussion with growing unease. The Galactic Naval Academy existed to train the best military minds in known space. They had always assumed that the warrior species like the Velkarons and Mantians were the pinnacle of military evolution. But here was a species that had evolved on a world so dangerous that it had produced beings who treated the Academy's deadliest examination like a nature walk. Sir, Professor Yilandra said, we need to make a decision. Do we continue the examination or extract all cadets immediately? Veltar looked at the screens showing Hana's steady progress toward the extraction point. What's the Academy's protocol for unprecedented situations? There isn't one. This has never happened before. Then we continue, Veltar decided. I want to see exactly what this human is capable of. In the Bleeding Gorge, Hana finished preparing dinner and began planning their route for the next day. They were making excellent time. At this pace, they would reach the extraction point with almost a full day to spare. She looked forward to seeing what challenges remained between them and their goal. 20 hours remained in the Crucible examination when Hana's group reached the Guardian's Gate. The final obstacle stood between them and the extraction point like something from a nightmare. The gate was a narrow passage through a wall of black rock that stretched across the entire valley. Ancient carvings covered the stone, warning travelers in a dozen dead languages about what lay beyond. But the carvings weren't what made this place dangerous. It was what lived here. The Guardian of the Gates had been bioengineered by a long-extinct species as the ultimate test of military capability. It was 3 times the size of any natural predator, with intelligence that rivaled most sentient species, and a body designed for one purpose, killing anything that tried to pass through its territory. Hana studied the creature from their hiding place behind a cluster of metal trees. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Its hide was silver and black, flowing like liquid metal. 6 legs carried it across the rocky ground with perfect grace. Its head had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, giving it nearly complete vision, in all directions. "That thing has killed more cadets than every other creature on this planet combined," Choi Dae-ho whispered. Sora checked her equipment nervously. "The briefing said it has armor that can stop plasma fire, and it's fast enough to catch a racing shuttle." Hana nodded absently. She was counting the Guardian's legs, watching how it moved, studying the pattern of its patrol route. "How long does it usually take cadets to get past this thing?" "Most don't," Dae-ho said. "They go around. Adds 3 days to the journey. And the ones who try to fight it? 67% casualties over the past 200 years. Hana smiled. Those were good odds. On Earth, fighting the great predators was much more dangerous than that. "I'm going to need you two to do exactly what I tell you," she said. "No questions, no hesitation. Can you do that?" Sora and Dae-ho looked at each other. They had been following Hana's lead for the past day, and it had kept them alive in situations that should have killed them. They trusted her completely. "What's the plan?" Sora asked. Hana pointed to a series of crystal formations near the Guardian's patrol route. "See those crystals? They're resonance stones. Hit them with the right frequency and they'll vibrate. Hit them with the wrong frequency, they shatter." Dae-ho finished. "But how does that help us?" "The Guardian uses echolocation for hunting," Hana explained. "Those 4 eyes are just for navigation. When it's tracking prey, it relies on sound bouncing off objects." Sora began to understand. "You want to blind it?" "Better than that, I want to confuse it." Hana pulled out her plasma cutter and began adjusting the settings. "The Guardian has been here for centuries. It knows every sound in this valley, but it's never heard anything like this." She fired a short burst at one of the crystal formations. The beam hit the crystal at a precise angle, causing it to ring like a bell. The sound echoed off the valley walls, creating a complex pattern of overlapping tones. The Guardian's head snapped up immediately. It began moving toward the sound, its massive body flowing across the rocks with deadly grace. "Phase 1, Hana whispered. "Dae-ho, move to those rocks on the left. When I signal, fire your plasma cutter at the crystal cluster there. 3-second burst, maximum power." Dae-ho crept away quietly. Hana turned to Sora. "You're going to create a distraction. See that narrow passage in the rock wall? Go there and wait for my signal. When I give it, make as much noise as possible. Shout, bang on the rocks, whatever. Make the Guardian think there's prey trying to hide." "What about you?" "I'm going hunting." Sora stared at her. "You're going to fight that thing alone." "I'm not going to fight it," Hana corrected. "I'm going to outsmart it." The Guardian reached the first crystal formation and began investigating. Its long neck stretched out, bringing its head close to the still vibrating stone. The creature's intelligence was obvious in how carefully it examined this new phenomenon. Hana waited until it was completely focused on the crystal, then signaled Dae-ho. The second plasma burst hit the crystal cluster on the left side of the valley. More bells began ringing, creating a cascade of sound that filled the air with music. The Guardian spun around, confused by the multiple sources of noise. That's when Hana signaled Sora. Sora began shouting and banging on the rocks. The sound echoed through the narrow passage, making it seem like there were multiple people hiding there. The Guardian's hunting instincts took over. It abandoned the crystals and began stalking toward Sora's position. Hana moved. She had been studying the Guardian's anatomy for the past hour. The creature was powerfully built, but it had the same weakness as most large predators. It was designed for overwhelming smaller prey, not for fighting something that could think several moves ahead. The Guardian's legs were its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. They gave it incredible speed and agility, but they were also vulnerable. If she could damage even one of them, Hana circled around behind the creature while it focused on hunting Sora. She moved carefully, using the ringing crystals to mask the sound of her footsteps. The Guardian's hearing was incredibly acute, but it was being overwhelmed by conflicting signals. When she was directly behind the creature, Hana pulled out her best weapon. It was a spear made from a void stalker's claw, reinforced with crystalline threading and balanced for throwing. She had only one shot. The spear flew true. It hit the Guardian just above the rear left leg, penetrating deep into the joint where the armor was weakest. The creature roared in pain and surprise, spinning around to face this new threat. But Hana was already moving again. She had expected the Guardian to turn, and she was ready for it. As the creature spun, she rolled under its body and struck again, this time with her plasma cutter set to maximum power. The beam cut deep into the Guardian's belly, finding the weak spot between its armor plates. Superheated energy burned through flesh and muscle, causing massive internal damage. The Guardian collapsed, its 6 legs no longer able to support its weight. It tried to get up, but the damage was too severe. After a few moments, it stopped, moving entirely. Hana stood over the body of the legendary Guardian, breathing hard but victorious. The entire fight had lasted less than 4 minutes. Sora and Deho came running from their positions, staring at the fallen creature in amazement. "How?" Sora asked. "It was expecting to hunt prey," Hana explained. "It wasn't expecting to become prey." In the monitoring station high above Mortis Prime, complete silence had fallen. Every instructor, every technician, every senior officer stared at their screens in disbelief. "She killed the Guardian," Professor Ylandra said unnecessarily. "In 4 minutes," Captain Thisara added. "Using improvised weapons and basic tactics," Commandant Veltar finished. The room erupted in discussions. Some instructors called for immediate extraction, arguing that the examination had become meaningless. Others demanded a complete review of the Academy's training protocols. Veltar raised his hand for silence. "How long until she reaches the B extraction point?" Professor Ylandra checked her readings. "At her current pace, 18 hours, which means she'll finish the examination in exactly half the allotted time." Veltar looked around the room at his staff. These were some of the finest military minds in the galaxy, beings who had spent their entire lives studying warfare and survival, and they were all humbled by a single human cadet who made everything look easy. "Gentlemen," he said quietly, "I believe we need to completely reconsider our understanding of human capabilities." On Mortis Prime, Hana was already leading her group through the Guardian's gate. The passage opened into a wide plain that stretched to the horizon. In the distance, they could see the extraction beacon, a tall metal tower that gleamed in the alien sunlight. "We did it," Deho said, hardly believing it was true. "Not yet," Hana replied. "We still have 18 hours to get there. Plenty of time for this planet to try killing us again." But she was smiling as she said it. For the first time since leaving Earth, Hana felt truly at home. This world was dangerous, yes, but it was honest about its dangers. Unlike the Academy, where the real threats came disguised as friends and allies. As they walked across the plain toward extraction, Hana began, planning what she would do with her first real meal back on the station, and maybe a proper shower, and clean clothes that didn't smell like Voidstalker blood. Behind them, the Guardian's gate stood open and unguarded for the first time in centuries. The legendary creature that had terrorized generations of cadets was just another trophy in a human's collection. The galaxy was about to learn what Earth had known for millennia. There was no such thing as an apex predator when humans were around. The extraction beacon came into view just as Mortis Prime's strange sun began to set behind the volcanic mountains. The metal tower stood in the center of a cleared area, surrounded by landing pads and emergency shelters. It looked like salvation after 3 days in hell. But Hana wasn't thinking about salvation. She was thinking about the camp she had built around the beacon. During the 6 hours since reaching the extraction point, she had turned the area into a small military base. Using materials gathered from their journey, she had constructed weather, shelters, organized supply stations, and created a medical treatment area. The landing pads were clear and marked for incoming rescue ships. 7 other cadets had made it to the extraction zone before the deadline. All of them were injured, exhausted, and barely alive. Hana had treated their wounds, shared her food, and given them safe places to rest. The camp looked like it had been there for weeks, not hours. Sora sat by the central fire, eating a meal made from local plants that Hana had identified as safe. Her acid burns had been treated with medicine made from processed Void Stalker blood. The burns were already beginning to heal. "I still can't believe we made it," Sora said. Choi Daeho was helping another cadet, a badly injured Mantian named Clicktar, with his broken leg. "We didn't just make it. We conquered this place." Cadet Rixthul, the Velkoran prince, sat nearby. His earlier arrogance had been replaced by quiet respect. He watched Hana work with something approaching awe. "Hana," he said, "can I ask you something?" She looked up from the map she was updating. "Sure. When you first arrived at the academy, I thought you were just another colonial human. Soft, weak, unprepared for real military service. And now?" Rixthul gestured at the camp around them. "Now I understand why my people's legends speak of humans with fear." "Your people have legends about humans?" "Old stories. From before first. Contact. Stories about beings who turned entire worlds into hunting grounds." He paused. "I thought they were just stories." Hana considered this. Maybe they were. Or maybe your people met some humans who were having a bad day. Above them, the first rescue ship appeared in the darkening sky. It was a medical transport, sent to evacuate the surviving cadets. The ship landed on one of the prepared pads, its engines kicking up clouds of dust. The rescue team that emerged was led by Captain Thisara herself. She looked around the organized camp with obvious surprise. "Cadet Lee," she said, "report." Hana stood at attention. 7 cadets recovered and treated for injuries, Captain. 2 are in serious condition but stable. 5 are ambulatory. All equipment has been secured and organized for transport. Time of arrival at extraction point, 36 hours, 14 minutes after planetfall, Captain. Captain Thisara's reptilian eyes widened slightly. "That's exactly half the allotted time." "Yes, Captain. And you've been here for 17 hours and 46 minutes, Captain." The captain walked through the camp, examining Hana's work. Everything was perfect. Better than perfect. It was the kind of organization that usually took teams of specialists weeks to achieve. "Where did you learn to do this?" Captain Thisara asked. "Do what, Captain?" "Create order from chaos. Turn a disaster zone into a functioning base of operations." Hana thought about the question. "I guess it's just what humans do. When things get bad, we fix them. Other rescue ships were landing now. Medical teams rushed to treat the injured cadets. Engineers began dismantling Hana's camp and loading equipment for transport. Commandant Veltar arrived on the last ship. He walked directly to where Hana stood, studying her with intense curiosity. "Cadet Lee," he said, "your performance on this examination has been unprecedented." "Thank you, sir. I'm not sure it was a compliment." Veltar looked around at the other cadets. "In 3 days, you have fundamentally changed how we understand survival tactics, resource management, and tactical adaptation." "I just did what seemed obvious, sir." "That's exactly the problem." Veltar clasped his forearms behind his back. "What seems obvious to you is revolutionary to everyone else." The transport ships lifted off from Mortis Prime's surface carrying the survivors back to Kepler Station. Through the ship's windows, Hana watched the planet shrink away below them. The volcanic mountains, the crystal forests, the metal swamps. It had been a beautiful world in its own deadly way. "Will you miss it?" Sora asked. "Miss what?" "The planet, the danger, the hunt." Hana considered the question. "No. There are other worlds, other challenges, but none like that one. Every world is like that one if you know how to look at it." Back at the academy, the debriefing took place in the main conference room. All the senior instructors were present, along with several officials from the Galactic Naval Command. They had come to see for themselves what a human could do. Professor Yilandra presented her analysis first. Charts and graphs filled the holographic, displays showing Hana's performance compared to 200 years of previous examinations. "In every measurable category," she concluded, "Cadet Lee's performance was not just superior, it was off the scale. She redefined what we thought was possible." Captain Thisara spoke next. "The cadet demonstrated tactical thinking, resource management, and leadership capabilities that exceed our highest expectations. She also showed an ability to adapt to unknown environments that I have never seen before." Finally, Commandant Veltar stood to address the room. "The Crucible examination exists to test the limits of our best military candidates," he said. "It is designed to push cadets beyond their breaking point to see what they are truly made of." He paused, looking directly at Hana. "Cadet Lee did not reach her breaking point. In fact, I'm not sure she has one." Murmurs filled the room. The implications were staggering. If humans could perform like this on one of the galaxy's most dangerous worlds, what could they do on normal planets? Furthermore, Veltar continued, her actions during the examination showed something even more remarkable than individual capability. She demonstrated the ability to turn other cadets into force multipliers. Every being she encountered became more effective, not less. An admiral from the Galactic Naval Command leaned forward. "What are you recommending, Commandant?" "Complete revision of our training protocols and immediate promotion of Cadet Lee to senior cadet with assignment to develop new survival training programs. That's unprecedented." So was her performance. The room fell silent as the officials considered this. Finally, the Admiral spoke again. "Approved, but I want regular reports on her progress. If humans are capable of this level of performance, we need to understand how to integrate them into our forces." After the meeting, Hana found herself alone, with Commandant Veltar in his office. The room was large and formal, with windows looking out at the stars. "Do you understand what just happened?" Veltar asked. "I passed the examination, sir." "You did more than pass it. You changed it forever." Veltar activated a holographic display showing Mortis Prime. The Crucible examination has been our ultimate test for over 2 centuries. Now we need to design a new one. Why? Because you made it look easy. Hana studied the display, thinking about her time on the planet. It wasn't easy. It was just logical. Explain. Every challenge had a solution. Every creature had a weakness. Every environment had resources that could be used. You just had to look for patterns and adapt accordingly. Veltar stared at her. That's what makes you terrifying. Sir? To you, there's no such thing as an impossible situation. There are just situations you haven't figured out yet. 3 months later, Hana stood in front of her first class of new cadets. The training room was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Velkorans, Mantians, Altarians, Centaurians, and even a few humans from the colony worlds. Today we're going to discuss adaptive survival strategies, she began. The first thing you need to understand is that there's no such thing as a hostile environment. A Mantian cadet raised one of his 4 arms. But the classification system clearly defines hostile environments based on lethality ratings. The HFY classification system is written by people who gave up too easily, Hana replied. Every environment has resources. Every challenge has a solution. You just need to change how you think about problems. She activated a holographic display showing various alien worlds. Some were frozen wastelands, others were molten hellscapes, still others were covered in toxic clouds. These worlds are all classified as uninhabitable, she said. But humans have lived in similar conditions on Earth for thousands of years. The difference isn't the environment, it's the mindset. A Velkoran cadet spoke up. What about predators? Some worlds have creatures that can't be defeated. Hana smiled. There's no such thing as a creature that can't be defeated. There are just creatures you haven't learned to hunt yet. She spent the next hour showing them techniques that had never been taught in any military academy. How to read an ecosystem. How to turn environmental hazards into advantages. How to make weapons from local materials. How to think like a predator instead of prey. When the class ended, the cadets filed out with expressions of amazement and terror. They had just learned that the universe was much more dangerous than they had thought. But they had also learned that they were more capable than they had ever imagined. Later that evening, Hana sat in her new quarters, writing a letter to her parents back on Earth. She told them AB,